I think probably have read more since the impasse when we can't do any professional development and trying to learn more and get to know more about these students that we serve. But even more so, since I became the dean and started looking at this, vision that Jay had in student success. Because if you all know, probably at most institutions, this is something that's under student affairs and very unique that, my entire career I've been in academic affairs, but looking at student success and then looking at the students that we're serving after impasse, after a pandemic has truly been something because I don't care what happens. I'm going to tell everybody until 2026 that COVID is going to cover us for a long time. And I think it's done a lot of damage to, the way that we have to do our jobs, both as just faculty, staff, administrators, and especially for advisors, because you all's roles are extremely crucial when you're looking at, how this student is going to transition either to a department or back to a community college if that's what they need, right? So I am going to be very honest with you. I probably did a lot of research out of other areas outside of the book because I know when Amanda and Danny and Tania selected this book, I always go online and look and try to read through, and I knew it was geared a lot towards community colleges, but they also said that some of the chapters in the book, really are relevant to who we are and what we are when we talk about, higher ed in general. And so I said, hey, let's go for it. I enjoy the fact that I have the opportunity to do it. And I do want to say to the other advisors, our departmental advisors, if there are books and stuff that you think are good, make sure you all get that to Amanda and Tania so they can look at it because I love the opportunity to be able to support our advisors, not just our academic advisors in my department, but the advisors across the campus. Because when we talk about student success, I want to be able to, educate everyone. And so as long as I, am able to purchase these books, then I'm gonna continue to do it. Now, if that gets cut, then y'all know what's gonna happen. Okay, we're gonna get one book and we're gonna pass it around, share it, and then everybody is gonna do what they do. But I do appreciate everybody's enthusiasm in doing this thing that I call e-learning, but I think that it is detrimental until we get back to the point where we can get out to some professional conferences and really learn from some other folks. So thank you. But I do want to put that disclaimer out there that of all of the chapters that I think I've looked at, and I probably only looked at probably about 5, a lot of them are geared more towards transferable skills to 4-year than the one that I have, which is the key to our student success, which is, of course, the experience. I want to just start a little bit with some of the takeaways that I got from Danny's last week is that the expectations, you guys, for what we have to do with these students is totally different than what we've had to do 10 years ago, right? We have to have more support. The one thing that is really, really good about this chapter, you guys, is that we have to start some assessment. And I don't know, I think, from my time, and I was an advisor here in 1990, right, to 1997. And so a lot has changed since then. But, we literally took those first year students that came in, we gave them their classes and we left. And we can't do that now. I think we also use those assessments or these evaluations on our performance reports. And we think that if it's a bad report, then, we're not going to be able to, get that increase or whatever it is. But the assessment tells us what we should be doing. And I think what happens is we think that we are assessing the person and what we should be doing is assessing the process, like what was going on in advisement that may have hindered or what could I've gotten more out of. So I think we really have to look at the assessment and what we do. And I do know, and I mentioned it last week, that in academic advising, we used to evaluate the students once they're going to the departments, which to me didn't make any sense, even though it'll help you all, because I think for the departmental, if there was an issue with that particular student, but I think once we get this Panther portal, all of that's going to be taken care of. But I think what we need to do is evaluate every semester to see if there are things that we should be doing different again, because there's a different type of students, and then just the involvement with our students. I think that's the big thing, because these students, I gotta stop saying kids, these students are relational. And so they want to have that conversation with you. They want to come and sit in your office. Like I had one yesterday that came in here, just wanted to talk about this whole process of going through a fraternity and sorority. And I'm like, you went below a 2.0 last semester. Tell me why you think that that's going to be good in the fall. Oh, I know I'm getting a 3.0. I said, but don't you want to kind of see, be stable? Let's do 2 semesters over 2.0. Let's see what it's like, And so just having that relationship where they can just walk in your office and not have to worry about an appointment is how these students function. So when I looked at chapter 2, I looked at, the 5 points that were really important to, I think, what we do in our 4-year institutions. And that's just understanding the demographics, you guys. We are totally different than we were when I was here in 90. That's why I keep telling everybody, they think I'm playing. When I tell y'all I'm getting ready to retire, I'm telling y'all I'm getting ready to retire. Not because I don't think that I'm good anymore. I just think I have to work harder for this group of students. And so I would rather leave it to you all, leave it to the young bloods. You all have the energy, you all have, what it takes to really just get in and have that conversation. And I'm sitting up here, for real? Are you really telling me that? And so that's where I know the age things comes in difference, but we got to know who we're serving, you guys. And so I really hope that what you all are doing is looking at that population. And I'll show a few numbers because, again, I work very closely with enrollment and then with institutional research, because I constantly want to see where we are with who we are on campuses. The empirical, evidence tells us right now, you guys, that 4-year college students, they link the academic advising to persistence. Now, I know I have snapped on a lot of students because they'll tell me senior year, well, my advisor didn't tell you. I said, your advisor shouldn't have had to tell you. Our job as advisors is not to tell you what you got to take every 4 years. We want you to look at those curriculum guides. We want you to look in that catalog, and you should know. What we did was we give you the tools that you need to know exactly what you need to take and how you need to take it. You got to take, responsibility for what it is. But we are very important when it comes to persistence, because if we don't give them those tools that first year, then they'll be lost the rest of the years. And we know some are going to do that anyway, but it's our duty and responsibility. And then we got to understand the experience. What can we do to make it better? And so we have to start listening to them. And so even if we know that some of them, don't know what they don't know. And that's my term now, especially since we have so many students that are the first in their families to go to college. We have to understand, you guys, what they want and then what we're going to be able to give them. And even if it's possible, I was just amazed at some of the information that I was looking at when they were saying the average caseload for advisors at some of these institutions. I'm like, that is crazy to me. In the numbers that they have to have, I think our numbers are high, but according to what some of them saying, they're like, they have a lot. Poor Sam, I just have to pray for you every day, because I know that group that you have is something else, a big group for real. But the other thing is a well-designed system, you guys. One size doesn't fit all anymore. We cannot come in, we cannot sit there. You're going to have different types of students. Like I said, first gens have no idea. I told Danny last summer, when I came out of one of the orientations, it was a young lady sitting outside and she was on the bench over in the union, and she was just crying because, she just had this ideal of this major that she was going to have in this class that she was going to have. And she was just crying because, she was just like, she felt bad because the advisor kept saying something about a prereq. She said prereq. And it was just, it made me feel like, and I said, prerequisite, and she had no idea. And I said, they didn't put you in this class because you didn't, she was just like, she had studied hard and she got A's in all her classes and she didn't understand why he put it. I said, that's a required course for the next course that you have to take. So sometimes you can't just go into that class because you want to. So I realized then, and I told Danny, is that we probably had to spend a little bit more time with her and just explaining to her what this meant, right? Just because you looked in the catalog, you did your homework and you picked all the classes you wanted, those classes might not be what you can take as a freshman. And I think she was even, oh, so you can't take a 3,000 level class. No, you can't take a 2,000. What was shocking is that after the advisement session, she's asking all these questions. And I said, that's not the advisor's fault. That's your fault. I said, because you shouldn't have walked out that room if there was a misunderstanding or you didn't understand what it was. So, we have to do that changing. Our kids, they're going to know, hopefully, with their parents with degrees and gone through higher ed, you're going to go more informed in that session, or that student should go more informed. And then we just have to start, whether we want to or not, you guys, is looking at a holistic advising. That is really crucial. I do know at one point when Tyler was here, Tyler was trying to start the group advising. It was easier, to get all the psychology majors coming in because we were so short on additional advisors to help. So he can get some of the psychology together. And they literally talked. And I think because they were in the GDC when they did it, they were talking about what you want to do with that major. How are you going to use this major? And I think it was easier because it was a group of them. And once one person said something, then the other person was like, yeah, you know what? That is something that I was thinking about. And so we got to start thinking outside of the box when we talk about what we're going to do. And especially, I really have to say it because I'm going to pray for our advisors this year because we're putting on a big shoulder. We're going to try to advise our current students and try to advise our incoming freshmen at the same time. Now, I said, this is going to be something, that we look at, but it's a different way that we have to start thinking about what we do and how we do it, right? So again, the very first thing was understanding the demographics. And of course, you guys, I did everything before COVID. And, the numbers are probably not that different, but they are different when you look all the way back to 2007 and 2017. Look at that first generation. I mean, it went up, almost 12 points, you guys. And that was 2017. And now we're at 2022. You look at the African-American population, that went from 9% to 21%. And again, you guys, if you look at the ethnic minority on this campus now, we're almost at 39%. So those numbers have even increased now. I even look at our Latinx. Now, I do know that with our Latinx, we really have to, I think, work a little bit harder when it comes to recruitment, because again, a lot of those are dual enrolled students. But we have seen some increase in those students that get the courses at their high school, then at least transitioning to our 4-year. But we got to know who it is we're serving in order to do what it is we have to do. You all should have to break down who you have in your departments, in your group of advisees that you're assigned. You need to know because that's important, whether we realize it or not. And it's said in the book that we have to advise differently. And what we've always been taught in higher ed, especially when it comes to discrimination, is that, we have to treat everyone the same. Well, I'm going to be honest, and I'm going to tell you right now, we can't do that, okay? We have to sometimes, and I've tried my best. Like I wanted to have University Foundation courses just for our African-American males. I think they have a totally different experience, both coming from inner city to a small town, just what they know, how they know, but it's discriminatory. Was what I got in 2007. Of course, now every institution in the world has it, right? I think we need to do a special University Foundation class for our international students. We expect to come in and take them to a 2 or 3 day training, and then they're, ready to get used to not only a new country, but an institution. So there's certain things we have to look at when we look at the demographics and characteristics of our students, because I do think that that's very important when you are getting ready to do your advising. Now, what I did do, you guys, is, and I didn't take because we did our evaluations for our advisors this first fall, I did take the overall evaluations and I had a look at them. I didn't look at any of the individual advisors. And again, that's Danny's job, and he'll look at that and work with the advisors, when they meet together as a group, and or if they, do it with their performance eval. But the one thing that I thought was really, really, interesting to me is how many times did you have contact with your advisor? 51% of them said at least 2 to 3 times, right? So again, some of those could have been gateway students, but I know we even have probably our standard admits that just want to come in, and check and see how things are going. And our advisors have been so good at just reaching out to those students just to see, this one time that you come in to pick your classes, I don't think we can do that anymore. Because then if you look at the second question, it says one advisor appointment per semester is required. For me, I believe this number of appointments to be beneficial. 55% said y'all need to be meeting with them 2 to 3 times a semester. So these are the students talking, right? And so that's why I said, to me, okay, yeah, maybe we need to do some evaluations. Maybe we need to look at and see. I even think that, and I already talked to Catherine Polidor, because I know in the CSA program, she always reaches out every year and is just like, Mona, do you have any research that I can give to students, so, they can have their projects and everything. And so, of course, yesterday, while I had the Hopes Chicago folks down here, they were in the gym in McAfee playing pickleball, which is a new sport for me. But anyway, so they were playing pickleball. And so I was just like, Catherine, I got some stuff for you, because we really have to look at, I would love to have some focus groups. If you all have some advisees that, really, did well with advising, that, just had that, because I know at Illinois State, when I was there, they had the peer advising. So, they didn't actually help them select classes, but they were the ones to really talk to those students and get them engaged and make sure that they saw their advisor. To me, it's like, our freshman connection, just, giving them a heads up on what it is you need to do and how you need to reach out. But if our students are telling us that they want to meet with us 2 or 3 times a semester, what are we doing and how can we handle that? And then I'm looking at those departments that have multiple students. How would this even work? Is it even possible? Because I just wonder. And so again, Justin, going what Danny did last week, I just have some questions I would like to ask their advisors. Do you all assess your advisor skills? Are there any of you that, have completed surveys? And then how do we use them? It's just like when I look at this, I can't just sit down and take nothing of it and say, this is what they want. And then we just go back to the old ways. And are we still advising the same way we did 10 years ago? And so I'm going to open this part up just so we can at least, have a dialogue to see if are there things that are different. And what I will do is I'll put those in the chat box, just in case you like me and you can't remember what those questions were. But I mean, do you all think that we're on the right track? Anybody?
I'll go ahead and jump in, Mona.
Okay.
I think given what our students have experienced with COVID, I don't advise the same way because I can't. I really can't. So for instance, I'm going to meet a student where they want to be met, whether it be in my office or via Zoom. And I think a lot of other advisors are seeing that, we want to meet them where they're at. So that is something that I do. And then something too is I've started to email more like just just references, things we think about, because they are so inundated with data that I'm just like, I'll email it to you, and that when you have time, you look at it. So that's something that I've done recently.
Yeah.
So I can kind of jump in. I've only done this job. This is, I think, my 4th year going on my 5th, but really have changed a lot of things of how I do things. Number one, just because I'm knowing the job a little better. We have evaluations. I do take those. I look at them, look at all the positives and the negatives, and kind of see what I can change. One of the things I have changed, all of 4 weeks before they started registering, I'd send an email out and say, okay, and my schedule would get filled up. But now I break them down into different levels. So my student teachers, I've already seen them. I'm seeing the next level that I'll go from, because our education goes from one level to the next. So I'm like, okay, this is the next one. And I just sent that email out, and I'm advising all of those. So that has changed kind of how I'm doing, number one, because I'm doing the same thing over and over, so I make less mistakes. But then I can also kind of just help them, and they know, okay, so it's not like everybody's trying to get into me at once, because I do have a lot of advisees. But I do try, and I talk to them in the hall, and they're always open to make appointments with me if I have time. I see the benefit of doing that 2 and 3 times. Just because of my caseload, I can barely get mine in just doing one a semester. So, but we have like the intro course that I teach that intro course for education. And I think a lot of those questions I get answered through that course, because we do talk a lot about different aspects of education, including program requirements and advising. And that's just a huge benefit, I think, to my students and my advisees, because I know they've heard it at least once, and then I can give it to them again.
Can I ask for the departmental advisors, approximately how many students do you all have?
I think it depends. So I have about and they change. So anywhere from 250 upwards to 280, 290. So it just depends on they move around all over. So
I think I'm at 235 right now. Heidi, about that too.
I'm right around 250.
And it says Amanda put in there, she has 110.
About
And I know it probably
180,
depends on the major.
Yeah.
What were you saying, Jeff?
about 180, 190.
180, 190. And it is, I'm telling you guys, it is truly something. I am reading another book. This is what our directors are getting ready to read. And this is Student Success in Higher Education and Developing the Whole Person Through High Impact Practices. And it is just amazing to me. There's a section, and I'll have a little bit on here in a little bit, about, academic advising and expectations. But again, I just believe that this holistic type of advising is definitely going to, hinder what we do, especially if you have those large groups of students. And I wonder if this is just, and that's why when Jay, came to me and we talked about the student success, and we were really focusing on years 1 and 2, because we were assuming that, by the time they get to the junior year, they're flying on their own. They really literally only need to come in there to see you when it's time to select their classes, because they're getting acclimated. Now, what I am saying again is that you all might even have some juniors and some seniors that are coming in that are just as lost as, your freshmen and sophomores. So I'm just like, how does this happen? But, it is what it is, but it's not all. And so that's why I think that one size fits all is not something that we should use. You know what I mean? And it does look like everybody is doing things different than they did before, because you have to. Has anybody ever thought about the group advising?
I know other universities had a friend that was in another one that did the group advising. I really like the one-on-one advising. I think maybe you could do group just for that informational part. But that one-on-one, I think, is where you get that retention, where the students, they know me, I know them. And in a group setting, you wouldn't get that. Yeah. So I know that they do that, and they have like 150, 200 in a group setting. I can't even imagine trying to advise to get schedules, and they don't have individual. And then they just open them up and people are waiting in line, and it's like an open, okay, from noon to or 1 to 4, I'm going to have an open session, and hopefully you can get in to see me if you need me. I think having them come in one-on-one gets that personal connection. And I don't know if you could get that with a group advising. Now, that doesn't mean we could never have group, that we could have some kind of hybrid, which they would still need to come in one-on-one. But okay, you're at this level, this is what we're coming up, make me your appointment with me. So, I think that, but I think having that one-on-one is very important and is unique, kind of unique to us from what I've heard around. So, yeah.
And I do know that in the other book, the Student Success in Higher Ed, they were making the recommendations of the group being somewhat like academic advising, offering workshops, like, going around and doing them in the residence house. And I know I'm so thankful Juanita comes in, and they love it in the University Foundation class. She does a whole session with them. She brings in, information that they have, hoping that, because she'll be in my class tomorrow, hoping that, they come to their meeting with you guys a little bit more prepared. Now, I don't know if it works or not, but I think it's so good. And, we're trying to incorporate it. Every University Foundation class has to have some type of academic advising workshop. It has to be done because again, that will take some of the pressure off of you all and it puts the responsibility on the student. And so, we're really working on it. And I think Danny is going to talk to everybody. Let's just do, a standard, and I really hate to say this because I know they going to hate it, but I really think an advisor needs to be the one that does it. We can talk about what we think is good. And I think some of the stuff is transferable, but sometimes it comes so much better because if they ask a question that we're not familiar with, as non-advisors, you will be able to tell them those. But I do think, and now it is going to be hard from now on, because I'll tell y'all what we did with University Foundation, but it is going to be somewhat challenging to do that for every course, but it is something that we're going to try to. And I think our meeting this Thursday. So we're going to start looking at those courses that are those particular subjects that we must cover in that University Foundation class, because we want to make sure that academically that they are successful and doing what they really need to do. Uh-oh. All right, let me find it back again to get back on track.
Mona, just real quick, following up with the group advising.
Uh-huh.
Julie and I just had a conversation last week about it because it was a little unique. We have a crew of students that are talking a lot, we'll say, and misinformation is just trickling everywhere about a couple of the courses. And so we talked about possibly doing some group advising with just our nutrition students, because they have such a set schedule and it's imperative that they stick with that. So we talked about maybe looking at that option for them, because a lot of the conversations were happening and we're trying to get ahead of it. But that was one of the options, and I thought that would be kind of interesting to try it out on a smaller group. I wouldn't start it with my public health students yet, but I don't know. I like the one-on-one interaction, but I'm kind of open to maybe thinking about some different ideas to avoid some of the little gossipy stuff that seems to be happening.
Yeah, I know. I've had some challenges. I teach the 2919 with the online students, and the biggest obstacle I think with those have been my psychology majors and my interdisciplinary. Again, because they just, and I had one lady, bless her heart, she's like, I listened to that D2L video like 3 times and still didn't get it. So she literally had to email me her assignments every time the assignment was due. So I was like, okay, this is a little bit deep. This is out of my realm, but I just believe that, we have to look at some of that when we think about what we do and how we go about doing it. So, but I do think with incoming freshmen, it's easier probably with the group. It may be because they're all coming in, and if they're undecided and they just want to take general requirements, or, they are education major, you want to put them in the 1420 if they make it to that level. And so sometimes it's easier for that particular group, but I do get it that again, that one size is not going to fit everybody, and you have to find that group that it'll be good with. Well, I do know, again, you guys, this is the book that I'm reading now that the directors will be reading soon, and they did have a lot, and it talks a lot about academic advising, what we can do to be successful. Everybody is on this holistic, experience, which means that you're literally going to have more than the average time that we have during, the regular advisement session, right? Because if you're trying to get to know them, if you're trying to understand where they are, what their likes and dislikes are, what they want to major in, I mean, those sessions will be too long. And that's where I think the 2 to 3 times during the semester might pay off more than, in orientation when we are strapped for time and trying to do what it is we have to do. I'm going to be curious, of course, and we're definitely going to evaluate after this semester when we look at trying to do the first session online for all of our students. So that's going to be something that we look at. But this book was really, really good to me because it gave me, again, another idea of who that student is. And so if you look at what we said at the very beginning with how our population here at Eastern has changed from 2007 to 2022, we know that we've increased in certain populations that is going to be a little bit more, I think, not stressful, but hard on our advisors because they're bringing more to the table than they had to before because we are getting a more diverse group of students. But one of the things that they really talked about this book, and this book was, I think, published in 2014. It is so relevant to what we're doing now in 2017. They're coming with anxiety, depression, relationship problems, stress, academic performance, family. I mean, all of this they're bringing to the table. And I tell you, when I went to undergrad, the biggest thing that happened when I was in here, the entire 5 years I was in college, I think was when the shuttle blew up. That was it. They're not seeing the shootings. They're not seeing all of this stuff that they're seeing. And, again, with us trying to shelter our kids from everything that's going on, I think what we've done is, put a lot of pressure on them. And so it's hard for them to even try to grasp all of this and go to school, and again, and this is why I keep telling y'all with my old self, I admit it, I'm just like, dang, well, I went to school, I did this, I did this, I did this, and I ain't had no problem. Well, again, we're talking about a different population of students. And so we have to be cognizant of that, but we also have to know, what they're capable of. And I'll talk to you a little bit, which is kind of about the student experience and what I'm doing, in this area now that I have it to help. But one of the biggest takeaways that I got from chapter 2, and then what I read in the student success in higher ed is just call for a more holistic approach to student success. So that doesn't have to be just with advising. That could be everything from the UF class. That could be RAs being more, personable. That could be us being more visible, going to lunch and letting them see us eat and eating with them or sitting down with them. We know that COVID has literally just rocked our world, period. Not just for our students, you guys. We have lost staff because I know staff at institutions that lead to they go into another whole fields just so they can work at home. Just the anxiety of being at work and having to go to work and the stress, it just seems easier for them to do it. And as educators, we really lack the tools of many different factors that influence, student success. We don't know, I am able to look at applications and I know schools in the Chicago area where kids are going to be challenged, right? Because when you look at, Whitney Young opposed to a Simeon, I know that student is going to have more of the tools. Everybody wanted to blame it on, test optional. I don't even think test optional has anything to do with it. This has something to do with the academics in the class, because I'm a believer that, those standardized tests are culturally biased. And so even somebody like me, I think that went to, University of Chicago 3 days, High Park 3 days, that still was challenging to me because of what they asked. But I do know the academics is where we struggle with, and we're going to have to make some changes in order to do that. But what are those changes going to have to be? And how are we going to ever get prepared for this student that's coming into college? And that's why we're thinking about a student success training, not just for the advisors, but we're talking about departments. We're talking about faculty, because we're trying to make all of these changes and adjustments for this new type of student that's coming in. And then we have some faculty that literally do the same thing they've always done. And so if you got different types of learner and they need different things, we have to do this across the campus and not just in particular areas, especially our student services. So we got to come up. And then whether we believe it or not, you guys, it's just required that we do different things for different folks. I just hate to say it, but you're going to have to do more for that student that's the first in their family to go to college than you are going to have to do for somebody that's a second generation, that's an upper middle class. We have to come up with ways in which we have to help them understand, because again, they don't know what they don't know, right? So what can we do? And again, we just got to be visible. The student has to know you. The student has to see you. We have to, truthfulness, what does your major require? And I tell them, I like I say, I prayed for Sam every time, because I didn't know if it was a billboard in Chicago that says every person in Chicago, when you graduate, you need to be a nurse. I'm like, you can't be a nurse, okay? And I'm probably easier telling them than you are, because I'll just sit them down, shut the door, and I have them flip that phone over so they don't record me, and then we just have a real story. We have a real conversation, right? Cause I'm just like, look at your high school transcript. Cause I'll show them on the screen. I'm like, there's no way you're gonna make it in this major unless you literally are planning on giving 4 hours per credit hour of studying per week. Okay. So if you're willing to do that, let's talk about it. But if not, and so we have to be able to talk to them about that major because we're not talking about what these students are talking about, what's gonna make them money, not necessarily what they're passionate about. And so I think that's that holistic conversation that we have, what are you going to do with your major? That's the first thing I ask them. When you tell me, oh, I want to be an engineer. Oh, what do you want to do? They can't even answer the question. So again, we have to be able to ask those questions so they know. And I'll tell students we had 44 students down for Access Granted this weekend. Everybody came in with a major. By the time they left my session at College 101, they was like, can we change our profile to undecided? You sure can, okay? Because let me tell y'all what's getting ready to happen, okay? And so, but they need to know that. We as advisors, what do we know? We need to know all the resources on campus. We can't solve everybody's problem. I will walk somebody down to the counseling center before I sit down, and then my master's is in guidance and counseling. But I'm like, girlfriend, your stuff is a little too deep for Mona. So we can walk you down, okay? And I'm gonna make sure that you talk to them, okay? Because we can't do it all. We have to start evaluating what we do. We got to get those voices from the students, whether we want to hear it or not. We need to know what they think about advising, if they even know about it, and then what do we do and how do we prepare, the students for those meetings? And again, I'm trying to do that in some of our university foundation classes to make sure, that they know what it is they need to know when they come in, at least have looked at something. Don't come in and sit down and say, okay, what you giving me for my classes? You got to tell me something, but we have to do it. And I'm trying on the other end to come up with different things that we have to look at as an institution when we talk about student success. Everybody knows I had, how I feel about, these basic requirements that we have in these classes. And so I met with the Council of Chairs on last Friday, and I just laid it out to them. I said, y'all, come on, we got to chat. I had institutional research go back 10 years for the 4-year graduation rate. Okay, 10 years. And I'm not talking about our ethnic minorities. I said, tell me what EIU's graduation rate is in 4 years. So why in the hell do we still have 4-year curriculum, guys? We ain't even graduating half our students in 4 years. Okay. So some kind of way, you guys, we have to think about things outside of what we have control over. So I said, I'm not telling you, and I had chairs that raised their hand and said, well, we have these guidelines where they have a 4-year plan. I said, yeah, we do have a 4-year plan. If you can get out in 4 years, you can do it. I said, but there should be alternatives that advisors have. Advisors should be able to look at the transcript of a high school and they can say, now listen, under normal circumstances, it takes 4 years to graduate from college. But looking at what the classes you took and how you took them, you might be better on this plan. Let's give them a 5-year plan that we can look at. Now, if you want to play catch up, if you want to go to summer school, if you want to add additional classes, those are things that we need to look about. I said, but as a department, we ain't even graduating all our kids in 4 years. So why don't we have a 5-year plan? Why doesn't an advisor have an option on that student that comes in instead of following that guide? Because if we don't follow the guide when they get to the department, y'all gonna be cussing out my polar advisors because they ain't doing what they supposed to be doing. But they knew that those kids weren't gonna survive in those classes. So I mean, I just took it to them. I took it to the deans first. The dean said, I'm gonna go tell it to the chair. And I told him, I said, and I'm gonna follow up with y'all in May, because I don't understand why we still living in this world that's not a world that we live in, and so we have to think as an institution on what we can do to change. How many of you all actually have students that follow the 4-year plan? Is it a lot? Sam? I know Sam be hunting us students down too.
A couple comments in addition to that. One, I absolutely agree. Looking at that high school transcript and having those honest conversations with students about what their freshman year could look like or should look like based on their individual pathway. And I definitely have those conversations with students as they come into their sophomore year, looking at pre-health requirements and things that they're gonna need to do. But with that, one thing that I've tried to do, and I would love to have feedback if I'm not on point with this, is meeting with the advisors in the Academic Success Center or Academic Advising Center and saying, if you get these students who aren't ready to take Gen Chem 1 or aren't ready to take college algebra, have them do this so they can still catch up, but send them to me and I can explain to them why, if you don't feel comfortable doing that. And I feel like I've been empowered to do that. And so one, empowering the departmental advisors and others on campus to be allowed to have those conversations. On top of that is, I don't know that it's necessarily the department chairs and the department advisors and the advisors in the Academic Advising Center that needs to be hearing this message. I think more people in the castle and admissions and retention need to be hearing this, because I keep hearing we have to give them a 4-year plan so that we can sell them that they can do this in 4 years, because that's what we're selling them. Well, we're selling them crap. So we need to go higher up than those of us presenting the message to those of us selling the message and saying, we need to keep them, we need to keep them, we need to get them, we need to get them, with false pretenses.
So that's a very good point. And again, that was what the chairs brought up, or one of the chairs brought up, is just like, well, yeah, you get locked into that for 4 years, but I mean, that's just 4 years. And I tell them, when I do the orientations, especially the gateway orientation, I said, I'm just gonna lay it out. Okay. I consider myself, I got a degree, my daddy, my mama got a degree, my sister, brother, everybody. And it still took me 5 years to graduate. Okay. And so it doesn't matter. But I also tell them I changed my major 3 times. Right. And so what we have to be able to do, and you're right, is talk to the admissions counselor. And I am meeting with Kelly and Josh on everything that I did with the chairs, because I agree with you. I do think that, we have to be able to do it, and the scary thing is, whether the recruiters understand or not, all we use is 6-year graduation rate for every institution in the United States. So we got to be doing that for a reason, right? And especially if we're not going to get those students that are coming from institutions that have prepared them literally to be college prep, right? And so if they're coming from schools, and so that's one of the things on the agenda with Josh and them, have we ever looked at, we know what schools we recruited from and everything, but have we looked to see literally which schools have that true preparation for college, where they've taken 4 years of English, 3 years of history, 3 years of math, 3 years of science? Those are specific things that we're looking for when you come to college. And we have to be able to be frank with them as a recruiter to say, if you took all of these courses, you ain't gonna have no problem at all. But let me tell you, because they're just as holistic with their kids as we are expecting us to be as an advisor. So they're calling these, they're talking to them one-on-one, they're sitting with them in the counselor's office. They have to be, real. And we're doing training with them this year when they come down in July to do training. So these are conversations that we're going to have with everybody. And so, like I said, we have to talk to the entire campus, because I get it. But I also want the department, chairs to understand that, listen, y'all, this one ain't working for everybody. Okay. And so hopefully they'll come up, they'll think about it, and, really, really think about what it is they need to be doing in order to make this happen. But we've done a lot of changes in general. I know housing used to do the early alerts. Now all of our grads are doing early alerts. They have keys to the residence hall. They have a poster on every floor with their picture that I'm your academic coach. We're trying to come up with unique ways in which we can reach these students and have those conversations with them. So we're trying, but you are correct. We got to make sure that everyone is on board and everybody does what they need to do to make this, because student success is going to be something on everybody's, to-do list. And in order for us to do our jobs, to make sure that, they are succeeding academically, it's going to take a village, right? It's going to take everybody in here to literally do what they need to do. So I am honored that I had the opportunity to chat with you guys. I didn't keep you too long, 45 minutes. but wanted to give a little bit, but I do hope that, you know, you all enjoy the book because they do have a lot. And even though it has a lot in here and it's geared towards community college, if you looked at the population of students that we serve, we're gradually getting to that same population when it comes to first gen. The only thing that we're really, really good at doing is keeping the number, I think, is across the board. And I'll send you all of this too. The number across the board when it comes to part-time and full-time. That's the only thing that has stayed, I mean, constant. And the same thing with women and men. Now, you know, the women are dominating, but the stats are pretty much the same all the way across. I mean, but the difference that we have is the population of students that we are serving. And even when the numbers went down, like in 2007, we had 10,000 students here, right, after 10th day. And now in fall 2022, we had, just for freshmen, we had 863. In fall 2022, 07, we had new freshmen, 2,103, and now we're down to 863. So even though those numbers have changed dramatically, the percentage are still across the board the same, except for when you get to those what we consider underserved populations. So, you know, I hope that you guys, you know, think about an evaluation or think about some way you can assess what you're doing to see if it works. And if not, you know, come up with ways where you all can at least even pull some of those students together, was like, especially your seniors. You know, what was your experience like during, you know, your time that you were here with us in the department? You know, are there things that we can do different? Is there anything that we can add to make your journey better? And so I just hope that you all will be able to, you know, come up with something that will be unique, but something that will help our students to succeed academically. Okay, can the evaluation, yes. I can make sure that we get that to you. I can get that from Carrie, because Carrie does it over in testing and evaluation. So we can get that in. But I am going to ask the advisors as well, are there additional questions that they want to add to it? Again, because we never used it as an overall. We pretty much just looked at what they did in those particular ones. But these students, I'm gonna tell you, if they don't do nothing, they definitely talk. So they got comments and everything if you get them in there. So I just, you know, truly appreciate the opportunity to have this time with you guys. If you all have any questions, all of the data that I have, I will put in a PDF and I will send it to Danny. So the numbers that I got on four-year graduation, all of the information I got on student population, all of that I will send to Danny and he will forward that to you all. So any other questions? All righty then.
Mona?